योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर् गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरिः ओम. So today we'll be going over recap of the Kaivalya Pada, summarizing the key points and going over the entire chapter. So to begin with, the Vibhuti Pada, the third chapter, that ended with the sutra Sattva Purushayoho Shuddhi Samye Kaivalyam. So that brings about the definition of Kaivalya. Kaivalya, of course, has been mentioned in more than one place, but this is the latest before the beginning of the fourth chapter, where it says the Shuddhi Samyam, which is the equalness of purity. When that is attained between the Chitta or the Buddhi Sattva and the Purusha, that is when Kaivalya arises. And then, or that is known as Kaivalya. And then there is an explanation of why that is so, which we have covered as part of the third chapter. But the reason to mention the third chapter is to make it clear that there is a continuity in the text that we have to realize. Often one goes just sutra by sutra and misses that there is a continuous flow of concepts and ideas that are coming in. So in the Kaivalya Pada, Kaivalya will be again touched upon in quite some detail, but at the same time several other points are also touched upon. So the first sutra of the Kaivalya Pada that said Janma Aushadhi Mantra Tamassamadhijaha Siddhayaha. So this again connects back to the previous chapter, because the previous chapter was all about siddhis and vibhutis coming from the various sanyamas or yogic kriyas. So the Kaivalya Pada starts by saying that the siddhis can actually come in multiple ways. They can be due to birth or some kind of herbs, magical herbs, etc., from mantra, from tapa, and then from due to samadhi. So then it will be brought about why the siddhi coming from samadhi, from the yogic process, is particularly significant, because that is the only one that can lead to Kaivalya. And that is why it was said, Kaivalya yogyam chittam nirdharayitum. So this has been done to establish which is the chitta that is, even though siddhis may occur in different ways, which is the chitta that can bring about Kaivalya. And therefore this starts from a somewhat different point to say, okay, from where can siddhis arise? And one of those 5 things is samadhija, that is coming from yoga. So the Kaivalya Pada starts from sort of a different point and it weaves its way through to Kaivalya, which can be somewhat confusing also. And that is why it is good to have this big picture. And then the second sutra says Jatyantari Parinamaha Prakritya Purat. So now this talks about, okay, how does there are these, it has been heard in Puranas and elsewhere that a person or a being can turn into another type of being, and how does it happen? Even without going through a death and birth cycle. But all of this is being brought about incidentally to explain how the Prakriti operates. And here it is said that the Prakriti can fill in and take in any form or role as is suitable for the Parinama in question. Okay, so the Prakriti Apurat means Prakriti can flow in and form the body, the Indriyas, the Manas, etc. as needed. So it is, Prakriti in some sense is all powerful, it can change into any form. And that explains the Jatyantara Parinama. But why does it take place? It says, Vyasa says, Dharmadi Nimittam Apekshamana. So there has to be a certain reason that makes it manifests, and that is the dharma, adharma, nimittas that come in. So here the power of Prakriti and the nature of functioning of Prakriti is shown. Just like a liquid can flow into a container of any shape, a Prakriti can form any jati, any kind of indriyas, etc. So since the nimitta was mentioned, that is required for that to happen, the third sutra says nimittam aprayojakam prakriti nam varana bhedastu tatha kshetrikavat. So now this is a very sort of an important concept where it says nimitta, it is aprayojaka. It doesn't actually cause it to happen. What it does is it removes the obstacle from something to take place. And then the drishtanta or the illustration is that of a farmer tending a field, where if they want to make the water flow from the ground at one level to another level, you don't have to pick and pour the water, you just have to remove the walls that is preventing the water from flowing. Now similarly here, for the Prakriti to take different shapes and forms, whether towards purity or otherwise, or into some other type of being, the dharma and adharma samskaras, they play the role. Okay, and that sort of also gives a foundation to the entire shastra, why it talks about dharma, adharma, right action, right thought, right thinking. That suddenly gets opened out by this sutra that says the dharma and adharma, they sort of create and remove obstacles, and then prakriti automatically follows. So the farmer, the kshetrika in this case, is the dharmadi nimittas. In place of the water, here it is the prakriti. Okay, and the walls that get built, those are, for example, the adharma, ajnana, etc., which can then be removed through right mode of yoga and so on, which will brings up the dharma that removes the walls that have been put about by adharma, and that forms a basis for all the advice of the shastras. So the dharma nimittas don't create things, they remove obstacles. That is what we learn from here. Then comes another question. So the Kaivalya Pada goes about bringing different points to open out the subtleties of knowledge and nuances of the Shastra that needs to be clear to the seeker. So the fourth sutra says Nirmana Chittani Asmita Matrat. So this is coming from again we have seen in Purana and Itihasa, etc., where it is said a yogi can take multiple bodily forms all at the same time. Then how does it happen? Do all the bodies have a separate chitta, the same chitta, the separate purushas? What is exactly happening? So that the fourth sutra says, okay, the asmita is the same, but so the ahankara tattva remains the same, but everything else from manas and indriyas onwards, that is the one that varies between them. So this says that, okay, the siddhi of yoga, to what extent can it go? But it also builds a solid foundation to establish that it is all consistent with this doctrine. It's not a sudden magic or something ad hoc and inconsistent. Then we see pravritti bhede prayojakam chittam ekam anekesham. So here what is happening is the chitta is, even though there are different bodily beings, different indriyas there, but the chitta, which causes the different vyaparas, different functioning, which is known as pravritti bhede, that remains common. So that is known as the prayojakam chittam, the one that is impelling all the actions, that is the common one. And having gone through these sort of allied areas to clarify certain points, then a key point is made in the sixth sutra, which says tatra dhyanajam anashayam. In all of these siddhis that may come from janma, aushadhi, mantra, tapa, etc., multiple chittas can be created and so on, but it is the only one that is dhyanajam or samadhijam, something that has come out of the yogic process, that is the only one that is anashayam. Anashayam means without a karmashaya, without kleshas, and without all the vasanas, etc. That comes only through yoga. So through all the siddhis, if one has to proceed towards Kaivalya, it is the one coming or arising out of yoga is the only one that is suitable. So now that Patanjali has come to this point, he starts explaining, okay, Dhyanajam is without karmashaya because it is anashayam. Then the Sutra 7 explains, it says, Karma ashukla akrishna yoginaha trividham itaresham. So here again, this is a very important teaching that is coming in. It says a karma can be classified in Krishna and Shukla, in some sense black and white. Black is done by the evil ones or the evil-minded ones. Shukla, the white, or the before that the Shukla Krishna is coming from people who may be doing good, okay, but even that is using external means like money, things, etc. So the moment external things are used, it is invariably that has caused sadness to somebody somewhere. Okay, that is the very nature of actions involving external means. So that is Shukla Krishna, a mix of black and white in different proportions based on how much good and how much bad is done. Then there is a purely Shukla, purely white, because it is all internal means. It is things like tapas, swadhyaya, dhyana, etc. All of that is done within, and therefore those karmas are completely Shukla, all white, leading to the sort of the dharma nimittas in the chitta. But yogi is something beyond all of this, because the yogis is ashukla akrishna, neither white nor black. So that is, it is said charamadehi, that is the yogi who has phala sannyasa, the one who has given up any attachment to the result of the action, to the fruit of the action, a true yogi. So here referred to as one who has samyak rupena nyastam karma phalam. The karma phala has been completely kept aside, of not of interest. So sannyasi in that sense. Kshina klesha, no kleshas exist. So the yogi is a very special case where the karmas are neither Krishna nor Shukla. So here we clearly understand that even if we talk about good conduct, papa, punya, etc., the yogi is something even beyond all of that. Now, from once the karma point has been addressed here, the next sutra talks about something called vasanas. So this point has not been, so the concept of vasanas has not been dealt with in too much detail, though samskaras have been in the chapter so far. Kaivalya Pada talks about vasana, where it says, Tataha tadvipaka anugunanam eva abhivyaktihi vasananam. So once there are karmas, there is a resultant fruit. The experiencing of the fruit generates a vasana. And that vasana is something that is lying in the chitta, which will get manifested when the right conditions arise. And then this leads to tendencies, either a liking for something or an aversion to something, etc. So just like there are karma samskaras, impressions left behind due to karma, vasanas are like anubhava samskaras, when something is experienced, which is classified as jati ayu bhoga, a birth, a lifespan, and life experiences, that leads to vasanas. And then these vasanas, they lead to certain tendencies and behaviors in a person. So that is all part of the chitta, and that leads to the ashaya that is there. So now, how does this arise? So as we know, the text is quite a rigorous one, and all the concepts get challenged. So when there is a certain birth and a certain condition, how does the right vasana arise? So the 9th sutra says, Jati desha kala vyavahitanam api anantaryam smriti samskarayoho ekarupatvat. So even though the vasanas are from many births before, so let's say some being took a birth as some creature, like let's say a cat, the tendency to chase after a mouse automatically comes. So the vasana has arisen. The vasana may be based on an experience from many births ago, but that will come about at the right time, even if it is separated in terms of the type of creature or through time or place, etc. The smriti and the samskara, because they are so related, those smritis will automatically arise. So that point is also clarified. And Sutra 10, Tasam Anaditvam Chashisho Nityatvad. So these vasanas are from time immemorial. There is no beginning because one has been gone, the conjunction with Prakriti has led to samsara and several birth and death cycles. The vasanas have always been there. So they are anadi, and that is clear from the tendency of every being to say or to desire uh, life for oneself, to avoid death, etc. That instinct itself proves that there is a previous experience of death, and therefore that there is always a previous experience which says that it is from time immemorial. So this sutra brings about a further detail about the vasanas, etc. Another, in the bhasha of this sutra, very interesting point, and a point that is missed often, is made by Vyasa, where he says, as per the Yoga Shastra, the chitta is vibhu. A vibhu dravyam means it is of all pervasive. So just like we say space is all pervasive, akasha is all pervasive, similarly chitta is said to be all pervasive, but its vritti, its functioning may be limited. So that may go through sankocha and vikasa, small and big. Just like a light, it says ghata prasada pradeepa kalpam. Just like the light may be limited, depending on whether it is inside a pot or a room. So it may be its spread may be limited or expanded. Similarly, the vritti of the chitta may be goes contraction and expansion due to the nature of the prakriti and the chitta, but the chitta itself is a vibhu dravyam. So that is a very important teaching coming here as in Sutra 10 given to us by Vyasa. This is coming indirectly in terms of the explanation of vasanas. So then we move on to Sutra 11, because what happens of this vasana one has to know, because in the end we know there is Kaivalya and we are talking so much about vasanas. So when will they go away? What happens to them? So Sutra 11 says, Hetu phala ashraya alambanaihi sangrihitatvat tesham abhave tad abhavaha. Because the vasana is made up of a cause for the vasana, the hetu, that is avidya. The phala, what made it come about, and the dharma, the nimittas, which are the phala that results from vasanas. Then the ashraya, the substratum, which is the chitta. The alambanam, that thing which makes the vasana manifest. Like in the example, the birth in the form of a cat made certain vasanas manifest. Now, because it is made up of those four things, when any of that is not available, the vasanas itself also go away. So, for example, when the avidya goes away, vasanas are bound to go away. Or when purushartha is no longer required, the vasanas will go away because they are made up of these four things. So, this is also a very clear categorization of four things that build up the existence of vasanas, and that immediately suggests how one could get rid of those vasanas by, for example, countering avidya or making purushartha unnecessary, etc. But then the natural question, I'm sort of pointing out to the continuity between the sutras. Then the next question that arises is, how can vasanas go away? Because there is the fundamental understanding is of satkaryavada, which means nothing comes out of the blue, nothing gets created, there are only transformations. Similarly, nothing gets destroyed, there is no nasha, there is no atyanta nasha. So then, what do you mean when you say vasanas go away? So the Sutra 12 says, Atita anagatam swarupatosya advabhedad dharmanam. So then it goes into a technical detail that there is actually nothing of completely going away or taking birth, but the dharmas or the characteristics, they are in different states. They are either in the state of potentiality, something that is yet to come, or that is something already there, or something has come and gone away. So everything goes through these different states. So the vasana similarly will go into from the vartamana to atita, from something that is existing and functioning to something that has been. So this is gone into in further detail, quite interesting detail actually, which we have covered as part of the particular sutra and its bhashya. And in the end, finally, what are these vasanas, etc.? So Sutra 13 says, Te vyakta sukshma gunatmanaha. So in the end, whether manifest or subtle, okay, in whichever state, they are all made up of gunas, sattva, raja, tama gunas, which is the fundamental constituent of Prakriti. Vasanas are also made up of the same thing. So that has also been, and in fact, everything is made up of the same thing. Now look at the continuity. It says, okay, if everything is just gunas, then how do you say this thing, that thing? Okay, how do you define thing? And everything is just different configurations of the gunas. Then how do you draw a boundary that this thing is this thing, that thing is the other thing, and so on? So the 14th sutra says, Parinama ekatvat vastu tattvam. So how is that defined? It says the Parinama ekatvam. So the transformation has a certain coherent quality. The transformation takes place together. When that happens in that manner, that thing is called a vastu, the particular thing. So the Kaivalya Pada is also making certain parts of the Siddhanta clear. What is the world view of the Yoga Shastra? How that it's also establishing that there are no gaps. The certain questions may arise, but they can be satisfactorily answered. So also as part of that, there are some opposing schools, particularly different schools of Buddhism, etc., that have their own points. So those points are mentioned and then they are countered. So that is happening starting previous sutra chapters also we have seen, but here it is happening in the Sutra 14, for example. But Yoga Shastra clearly says that we do recognize different vastus, even though we say things are made up of gunas, and we bring all that together in a consistent way by saying Parinama ekatvat vastu tattvam. Then comes Sutra 15, which is also very instructive. It says Vastu samye chitta bhedat tayoho vivaktaha panthaha. So there are two aspects to be understood as part of this sutra. One is there is an opinion that says things are not real at all. It is just a figment of imagination. It is created from the chitta. So that is also countered here by saying no, different minds, different chittas cognize the same thing. So they have their own different paths. The chitta has its own existence, functioning and path. The things have their own existence and functioning and path. Now at the same time, a very interesting point is made here. A certain example is given that if a chitta is full of dharma, so it is sattvic, it has a sattva guna, then when it looks at a thing, what it gets is sukha jnanam. So the nature of the chitta determines how things are experienced, how they are seen. Now if a chitta is full of adharma, what it gets is dukkha jnanam, and so on. If it is full of avidya, it gets muda jnanam. And if it is something of like a yogi of a samyak darshanam, or one who has a tattva jnanam, then it creates madhyastha jnanam. So depending on the chitta, madhyastha jnanam means a sort of a detached witnessing, unattached witnessing that comes because the reality is well known, which also then tells us why the Yoga Shastra, etc., talks about the purification of the chitta, because the purification of purified chitta completely changes how the world is experienced, and that is very inherent in the functioning. It is not at the layer of psychology and thought, but the very functioning of the chitta is that if the chitta has dharma and sattva, even other things have dharma and sattva, and they interact, and that interaction leads to a very different experience. Compared to the chitta is full of adharma, it will interact more with the rajatama part of the things that it is experiencing, and therefore it will eventually lead to dukkha and sorrow. So from a very different perspective also, the importance of purification of one's chitta is seen as part of the bhashya on this sutra. Now, the other points are considered and countered. For example, there is a thought that things may be real, but they always arise in the context of the jnana of some chitta. Only if somebody is cognizing, just like it is said that if a tree falls in the forest and there is nobody to hear it, does it make noise? So this is a common question in the philosophical realm. So similarly, jnana sahabhu, if everything is always in uh, association with somebody's jnana, and things don't have their independent existence. That is one opinion. So that is countered. Sutra 16. It says, Nacha eka chitta tantram vastu. Tad apramanakam tada kim syat. So this is a sutra in more of in a form of a question, rhetorical question that says no, the things that do not exist in association with the jnana from some chitta. Because if that chitta is, then there is no, it is not looking at the thing. Does that thing vanish? And so on. So the nature of reality gets opened out here. And now from the next Sutra 17, an extremely interesting aspect gets covered in Kaivalya Pada in a lot of detail, which is the nature of knowledge process. And this is a question that all schools of philosophy have to tackle, and then they come up with their own different explanation. And here we see the explanation of Yoga Shastra, which we cannot do justice to it in a simple overview. So what I want to mention is this needs a lot of thought and reflection. So when we say I know something, what does it exactly mean? We just take it for granted. But then in philosophy, each aspect has to be dealt with in a lot of detail, and it has to be free of dosha, problems, or gaps. And from this sutra onwards, the 17th sutra, which I'll be mentioning, that aspect is covered in high detail, and it needs a lot of thought and reflection. Of course, we have covered it as part of covering the sutras in detail as well, and yet I think self-thinking is something that is required here. So the Sutra 17 says, Tad uparagapekshitvat chittasya vastu jnata jnatam. So really, a thing has independent existence as per Yoga Shastra, and it is the coloring of the chitta by that thing that leads to the notion of the thing is known or unknown. Okay, so that is the one part of the knowledge process where it comes up to the chitta. So it is said ayaskanta manikalpa, like a magnet. Similarly, here the chitta and vishaya sambandha is in that sense through the indriyas, etc. A thing colors the chitta, and then one calls it as known or unknown, and therefore chitta goes through the states of something is known, something is unknown, so it is ever changing. Whereas the next sutra says Purusha is very different. Sada jnata chitta vritteyas tat prabhoho Purushasya aparinamitvat. So the prabhoho Purushasya, the Lord, the Purusha, which is who is said to be the Lord of the chitta. For the Purusha, the chitta is always known. It is always in the known category because of the close association between the Purusha and the chitta. And because it is forever known, the Purusha is forever unchanging. And the same logic is also established the other way. The Purusha is forever unchanging and the Chitta is forever known to it. So the process of knowing, here we have to, I can't spend too much time. As we go through the sutras we can see it, but the process of knowing actually is in two parts. One part is representing. So the Chitta represents things for the Purusha, and therefore Chitta is undergoing change because it has to create a representation of whatever, like a flower or a pot, etc., that it is seeing. But the Purusha undergoes no change because the Purusha knows the Chitta, so it knows what is represented. And since Chitta is always known to it, for Purusha there is a changelessness. And that changelessness in knowing is important as a knower. Because if we have to define knowing, we also have to define the fact that, okay, I know the flower. I know that I know the flower. I know that I know that I know the flower. So there is a potential of an infinity of knowing that I know. If the knowledge process requires a change, this means for any knowledge there would have to be an infinite series of changes, which of course is impossible. So that is known as anavastha doshaha. Therefore, the ultimate knower has to be an unchanging principle. And that is where Yoga Shastra, then it says the Purusha is that unchanging principle, which is the ultimate knower and which always knows the Chitta. The Sutra 19 then says, Na tat swabhasam drishyatvat. So there is another point of view where, so why do you need the Purusha? Chitta itself can know itself, and there is no need of any other knower. So like I just mentioned, here the Sutra 19 says no, Chitta cannot be self-illuminating, it cannot be self-knowing, because after all, it falls under the knowable category. If something is knowable, means something else can know it, which means it can be represented. I mean, for example, if I were to give an example, let's say we have a map of a place. Now the map of a place, let's say it's a perfect map, so it can represent everything in that place in the map. So it is not an approximation, it is a complete thing. But then the problem is, the map is also in the same place. So then the map has to represent itself, which already represented everything. And now you can see how that is going into an infinite regress, because the map contains itself and it is perfect. So the thing that it contains also has to be perfect, and that goes on to infinity. So something that is in the knowable category cannot be in the knower category. And then it says, Na tat swabhasam drishyatvat. So that is a key point being made, why there is this Purusha Chitta Sambandha that comes in Yoga Shastra, and why the Purusha is unchanging and the knower, and why the Chitta is the instrument of knowing but not the ultimate knower, and why the Chitta has to be forever changing. And as part of this, the other opinions of other schools which postulate that there is no need of Purusha, the Chitta can know itself, etc., that also gets countered. Ekasamaye cha ubhaya anavadharanam. So the Sutra 20 similarly says, for against the school of momentarily, where everything is momentary, the Chitta takes place and goes away. Then the next Chitta comes and goes away. Everything is momentary. So it says no, that cannot be true, because something can't know itself and something else in a single moment. The detail of this has been dealt with, but you can see how interesting and fascinating just the survey of the various thoughts and finding, okay, what are the gaps there. Now the Sutra 21, it says Chittantara Drishye Buddhi Buddhehe Ati Prasangaha Smriti Sankarascha. Now if somebody counters momentarity, one may say, okay, if you don't accept momentary Chitta that knows itself, just assume there is a second Chitta that knows the first one. And if you ask, okay, then who knows the second one? You say there is a third Chitta that knows the second one. And then this Sutra says that is not possible, because there is Ati Prasanga, because it goes on to infinity. And there is a nice example. It says, okay, Matham Janami, I know a Matha. But at the same time, I also know the Chitta that knows the Pata. So Patagnyatra Chittam Janami. Oh, but at the same time, I know something that is a third Chitta. Ghatagnyatra Chittagnatra with Chittam Janami. And this goes on and goes on and goes on. That is known as Ati Prasangaha and Smriti Sankara. So it says this kind of postulate is not tenable, and therefore the Chitta Purusha, the way it has been described, is the right system. So what we have to appreciate is the depth of thought, the level of rigor that these seers have gone through. And it is not something hand-waving, a concept vaguely described and so on. It is tried to make watertight in terms of any gaps or any opposition or arguments and so on. Then, how does Purusha know the Chitta? So what exactly is the knowledge process in the Yoga Shastra? So the Sutra 22 says, Chitehe. So Chiti refers to Purusha, Chiti Shakti. So Chitehe aprati sankramayaha tad akarapattau swabuddhi samvedanam. So here the actual knowledge process of Yoga Shastra is described, where the influence of the Purusha falls on the Chitta, and that takes the shape of the Chitta, and that is how the knowledge process is said to take place. Again, quite interesting, much to think about, but we are just doing an overview right now. And then it says, the glory of the Chitta, Drashtru Drishyoho uparaktam chittam sarvartham. So this chitta, if you think about it, it has an influence of the seer, the Purusha. It has also the influence of the Indriyas. So it is seeing the Prakriti, the Drishya. It is seeing the world, the trees, the flowers, the butterflies and so on. But it also has the influence of the Purusha on it. So it has the Drashta, the Purusha, and the Drishya, the world. Both, it is colored by both. So this Chitta then becomes Sarvartham. It is, its scope is everything. So that's sort of also the glory of the Chitta that we have to understand how it is operating. Now, if it is all this, what is it for? See, the question is what is the nature of things, but also there is a question of what is the purpose of things, which comes under teleology. So, Sutra 24 it says, Tad asankhyeya vasana bihis chitramapi parartham samhatyakaritvat. The chitta is made up of several vasanas, etc., and it is highly variegated thing. But since it is made up of parts that are functioning together, it is for something else, for somebody else. Because as we see in the world, anything that is made up of parts and functioning for some purpose, that purpose is always for somebody else. And similarly here, that somebody else is Purusha. So all the functioning of the Chitta is, as we have seen in the second chapter, it is for the Bhoga and Apavarga for the purpose of Purusha. And then comes an interesting Sutra 25, Vishesha Darshina Atma Bhava Bhavana Vinivrittihi. So, firstly, Vishesha Darshina means a yogi, a highly qualified yogi of a high level. What happens? Atma Bhava Bhavana Vinivrittihi. So, the desire to know who am I, from where have I come, what am I for, that then goes away. Okay. Ko aham asam. Katam aham asam. Kim svididam. What is all this? Katam svididam. How did all this come about? Keva bhavishyama. What is going to happen? So all the fundamental need to know, the curiosity, the jnana, that goes away when one gets the knowledge from the samadhi process. But before that, Vyasa explains that for the question to arise itself, a certain samskara is required. One has to be qualified. So it says, Moksha Marga Shravanena Yasya Roma Harsha Ashrupato Drishyate. So just by hearing about the Moksha Shastra, Yoga, Vedanta, etc., the hair stand on end. There are tears from the eyes. So one is highly moved by these Shastras. That shows that, okay, in this person there is a seed of Viveka Khyati, of Vishesha Darshanam. But then he goes further, he says, once that Vishesha Darshanam happens, once that Viveka Khyati arises, then this person who had that spirit of spiritual inquiry, that goes away, because the Viveka Khyati helps answer all those questions. When that happens, slowly now the chapter is moving towards Kaivalya, and Sutra 26 says, Tada Viveka Nimnam Kaivalya Pragbharam Chittam. Now the Viveka arises at this stage, when all these questions have faded away due to Viveka Khyati, and now the Chitta starts leaning towards Kaivalya, because now it is made up of those samskaras, the Nirodha Samskara, Samadhi Samskara, etc., that shifts the weight. The Chitta, which was so far, the weight was such that it was leaning towards the world and the samsara. Now that same Chitta, so that is known as Kaivalya Pragbharam. It is as though the weight of the Chitta makes it lean towards Kaivalya, liberation. And yet, what happens? Sutra 27 says, Tachidreshu Pratyayantarani Samskarebhyaha. Even in that there are gaps, where one comes back to out of the Samadhi, out of the Viveka Khyati in the normal world process. Why? Because there are still samskaras that generate those pratyayas, normal worldly pratyayas in the gaps. So there are still gaps in the Samadhi process, in the Viveka Khyati process. So those are known as Chidra. And Tat Chidreshu, it says, due to the samskaras, one comes back to the normal worldly activity, which is known as pratyayantarani. Now these, how to tackle this? Hanam esham kleshavat uktam. Just like jnana or viveka khyati, etc., that brings the avidya and other kleshas into a burned seed state so that they will not sprout. They will not lead to avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, etc. Doesn't liking, hatred, all of that. The jnana sort of destroys that. Similarly, here also, these samskaras get burnt due to this process of greater and greater viveka khyati. So even here you see how there is a gradation, and more siddhis come to the yogi. In fact, we have seen sarva bhava adhishtatritvam, sarva jnatritvam, all knowership and control over all existence. That level of capacity comes through viveka khyati. But then Sutra 29 clarifies, prasankhyaane api akusidasya sarvatha vivekakhyate dharmamegha samadhi. So even though the vivekakhyati gives rise to so much knowledge, so much control and power, one who then is not really attracted to that anymore, akusidasya, at that point what happens is there is complete total vivekakhyati, and the pinnacle of vivekakhyati, pinnacle of ultimate knowledge, and is like a rain coming from a thundercloud, dharma megha samadhi. So this samadhi is as though the viveka khyati, the dharma bursts forth from a huge cloud which of the form of dharma. So that is the zenith, the ultimate level of viveka khyati, where the vibhutis from viveka khyati, etc., is something that the yogi is no longer interested in, but he simply remains in viveka khyati. There are no gaps anymore. Samskaras doesn't take the yogi back to worldly processes, worldly thoughts, etc. So there is a complete immersion in the viveka khyati, and at that point the samadhi is said to have reached the point of dharma megha samadhi. At that point, when that happens, Sutra 30 says, Tataha klesha karma nivrittihi. So all the klesha, avidya, etc., kleshas, and all the karmashayas from innumerable births, they start fading away. Nivritti. One is completely freed of that after the dharma megha samadhi. Then, tada, Sutra 31, sarvavarana malapetasya jnanasya anantyat jneyam alpam. Now the jnana, all the covering has been removed, all the veil has been removed. The chitta, that is vibhu, has complete jnana that has come, and jneyam is alpam, to be known. There is nothing left to be known. So the jneyam, the thing to be known, becomes almost zero, and then the jnanam is like infinity. Then what happens? Tatak Kritarthanam. So now all of this we have to remember, even though we say chitta, the yogi, etc., it is after all gunas of prakriti in the chitta. So Kritarthanam parinama krama samaptihi gunanam. So these gunas, the sattva, raja, tama gunas, fundamental constituents of prakriti, they were taking all these configurations in the form of bhutas, chitta, indriya, etc., to create bhoga apavarga, so the experiences and liberation for the yogi. Now their purpose is achieved. So they are kritartha. Whatever was the purpose of the gunas, that purpose is achieved. So therefore the parinama krama, the sequence of transformation, is complete. So the guna has come to a state where whatever transformations were required have been done. The krama has ended. And even as the chapter is just coming to a close, the technical question is again asked. What is this krama? When you say krama samapti, the sequence is done. What is the meaning of krama? What is the sequence? So that is answered in Sutra 33. Kshana pratyohi parinama aparanta nirgrahya kramaha. So krama is that thing which is existing through the moments as the transformations are happening. And one can come to know about it at the end of those transformations. So for the example is given, when there is a piece of cloth, as it gets older and older, when it has become old, you see, okay, a transformation has happened. So the krama is recognized at the end of the transformation. So that is what the krama is. It exists through the sequence of moments, and it is recognized when the transformation is complete. But there is some other interesting discussion in this, then the bhashya for the sutra, because there are nitya, these entities are nitya, they are eternal. The prakriti is eternal, the purusha is eternal. So do both of them have a krama? So it says yes, parinama nityata, kutastha nityata. Now we don't have to go through it right now. That has been explained as part of the sutra. I just wanted to point out there is much more in the bhashya that is interesting. And then there is another interesting question. This world process, the samsara, does it ever get over or not? And again, there is an interesting discussion. But the answer to this question is when, for a normal person, the samsara continues. After the death, there is another birth and so on. But for a yogi, at the point where the gunas have become kritartha, chitta has become kritartha, he has reached the point of Kaivalya, there is no more samsara at all. So the yogi is completely, fully liberated. So I'll refer you back to the particular session where this sutra was covered, where this has gone into much more interesting detail. And now we come to the final sutra, which talks about Kaivalyam. And Kaivalyam has been covered in other chapters also, but here we have come to this point from a perspective of what is exactly happening at each and every stage. So this is like a slow motion, high resolution view of the process towards Kaivalya. And it says Purushartha Shunyanam Gunanam Pratiprasavaha Kaivalyam Swarupa Pratishtava Chittishaktirati. So here there is Kaivalyam in two ways. The gunas also have a Kaivalya because they are going into Pratiprasava. All the configurations that they had taken of the chitta, the body, the indriyas, etc., that goes back into the Prakriti in its Samya Avastha, in its equal state. So as far as the gunas are concerned, they are isolated from the Purusha. The Purusha itself, there is a Swarupa Pratishtha. It is established in itself. The Chitti Shakti is completely established in itself, and that is Kaivalya. So with this, the Kaivalya Pada ends, and the entire text also ends at this point. So here we have covered the entire text. It has been over a period of 5 years, or a little more than 5 years. It is said, there is a commonly quoted saying that is Shreyansi Bahu Vignani. Whenever you undertake something good, a lot of obstacles come about. And in some sense that did happen with the several incidents that took place. There is also the corona epidemic and so on. But we are happy that the text is complete. One has to, of course, read it, listen to it, read and listen to other texts, correlate and so on. And that is how the learning is set to mature. But with this, the recap of the Kaivalya Pada, and therefore the last chapter of the text is done.
So this is the fourth chapter, Kaivalya Pada. The Kaivalya literally is rendered as isolation. Kaivalya means what in spiritual realm we understand as moksha, mukti, bhavanasha, nirvana. So these are all different dimensions of this spiritual samambonam, emancipation, liberation, isolation, freedom. And this has come about basically because we studied the Ashtanga Yoga. The Ashtanga Yoga results into what is called as Asampragnat Samadhi, the supreme Samadhi. And Asampragnat Samadhi has a phala. It results into Kaivalya. So, Ashtanga Yoga is a path for liberation, freedom, emancipation, etc., etc. So here we saw that this is spiritual samambonam. However, according to the ethos of the Oriental philosophy, Vedic philosophy, Sanatana Dharma, there are chaturvida purusharthas: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So, although what we saw in the text was culmination of human spiritual summum bonum, the process, however, commences right from the commencement of spiritual pursuit. Because we must try to get freedom from so many things. We are shackles, we are bound, we are under influence, and we want freedom from influence of gunas, influence of material entity, because they put lots of limitations on us. So we are limited. And for spiritual summum bonum, we are expected to be going past all shackles, all limitations. So therefore, the concept of moksha is there once you adhere to spiritual path. You must get free from certain things. You must be free from certain tendencies. You must be slowly getting free from influence of mundane gravities. You must be free from the havoc of gunas. So gradually we have to have the process of freedom in place. It is not that it only happens after sampragnat samadhi. It commences in some way or the other right from the beginning and commencement of spiritual pursuit. So we understand in our life we are limited. Therefore, we cannot be doing so many things that we want to do. We have bondage. Therefore, we want freedom from bondage. We have shackles. And we have influences. We want to be free from those influences. That is what the spiritual process of evolvement is. You must be free from certain things which are making one limited, which make us limited, which create a bondage, which fasten us with the shackles. And therefore, spiritual pursuit is to be getting freed from all this. So this is, Kaivalya is moksha. If Kaivalya is moksha, moksha starts in some way or the other the moment we have consciousness developed for spiritual pursuit and spiritual goal in life. So that is one thing to be taken note of here. So Ashtanga Yoga gives you freedom from certain things, which Patanjali briefly mentions, Ashuddhi Kshaya, and the cloud of Ajnanam that is there. So we want light of Jnana. So we don't have the light of Jnana sufficiently, and we have also lots of Ashuddhis, malign aspects engulfing our chitta, engulfing ourself, engulfing our embodiment, engulfing our existence, and we want to be slowly free from that. Simply like a child has ignorance, and we want to overcome this ignorance. We don't want to remain in the same ignorance decade after decade after decade in life. We have to leave behind so many things. We must be free from so many things. We must be free from so many inabilities. We have to be free from so many limitations. And that's the Kaivalya process or Mukti process or Mukti Prakriya. Anyway, here Patanjali is telling us about the yogis concept and aspect of the moksha and mukti. We want to be free from our problems, our limitations, obstructions that come in our way. We want to be free from all that. But in case of a yogi, it's a different condition. It is not akin to our conditions. We are trying to be free from something. It is not that the yogi is trying to be free from something. Asambhagnat and or yogi is not looking for freedom from something that we are looking for freedom from now. From what? And therefore, this Kaivalya should be understood as something which is moksha. And we don't have to wait for Asambhagnat Samadhi to actualize and then you will consider moksha. It has to be commenced earlier. It does commence earlier. When you say it is bondage, it is limitation, it is shackles, it is ill influences. We want to be free from all that. So anyway, that's how this topic has come up, because Ashtanga Yoga has a phala, samadhi phala, asampajna samadhi phala is expressly mentioned as Kaivalyam. And that Kaivalyam is being described textually here. So incidentally, so many factors come in for our discussion which are dealt with in the chapter. Now, freedom for what? It is the chitta. The chitta is under the shackles and grips and influences and gravities of vasanas. So the chitta is described in different dimensions here. Apart from what we had discussed earlier, chitta vrittis, chitta bhumis, etc., etc. So the chitta has been discussed in the light of Kaivalya, and just now you heard the recapitulation of the chapter as to how the Kaivalya takes place. So of course this is moksha of Purusha Tattva, which also implies there is moksha of Prakriti Tattva, which you just now heard in the recapitulation. The Prakriti has its freedom and Purusha has his freedom in spiritual samam bodham. So how this process takes place? What is the process of a yogi who has accomplished samadhi, and then he has gone to samadhi siddhis and the various samadhi siddhis, and those samadhi siddhis which are directly related to Kaivalyam, which was the last sutra of the Vibhuti Pada, which was quoted by Srineet at the beginning of the session. Satya Purushayoho Shuddhitamne Kaivalyam. So the very concept and idea of Kaivalya is now specific with reference to a yogi who is endowed with siddhis, Gnana siddhis and Kriya siddhis. So what is the journey of his Kaivalya is being mentioned in the 4th chapter. Incidentally, the chitta is going to get liberated. So what is the liberation of chitta? Therefore, in the light of that, what is chitta is also discussed. And this is so important from the metaphysics point of view. And so what is the chitta, which is the centric aspect of entire yogic process? How does the yogi conduct himself when he is accomplished with all these siddhis and who is accomplished yogi? How are his karmas? We know our karmas cast shackles on us, and we have to face the consequences. Now, this will not happen to a yogi. What are his types of karmas? So, incidental factors in the process of the final lap of journey, so many things need to be mentioned, like Ashukla Krishna karma. So, how these karmas are karmas but don't end into fructification. Otherwise, all karmas have fruits. All karmas have consequences. All karmas, one must face the consequences. But here is the condition that yogi doesn't have to face the consequences because of particular class of karma, which is called Ashukla Krishna, neither Shukla nor Akrishna. And then beautiful topic incidentally that came up is Jatyantar Parinama. We know Janmantar Parinama. So that is implied. Jatyantar Parinama is mentioned, how the transformations of yogis take place. And incidentally, Jatyantar Parinama gets mentioned. We all experience Jatyantar Parinama, but then yogi, accomplished yogi, experiences Jatyantar Parinama while we experience Janmantar Parinama. So, yoga discusses Janmantar Parinama, how the vasanas give bloom and blossom into another incarnation, another avatar, another incarnation. So Jatyantar Paranama and Janmantar Paranama are very important topics which have come, we have crossed in the chapter. How the vasanas are formulated is an important consideration here. So therefore the vasanas are described, constitution of vasanas are described. The vasanas are timeless, in the sense they are beginningless, they cannot be endless, otherwise there won't be emancipation. So how the end occurs to something that is beginningless without violating the metaphysical principle theory of Sat Karyavada. Then we all think that our chitta, our psyche is the knower. What is exactly the position? So there are certain philosophies which postulate chitta as only the principle, and they don't postulate anything as metaphysical, eternal, conscious entity. So that also has to be taken onto advil. If the Purusha is not accepted, the Kaivalya would be a meaningless idea, meaningless concept. Therefore, they are to be answered. Those who do not admit entity of self, a metaphysical principle, the self, which is immutable, which is eternal, which is birthless, deathless, etc. Well, certain questions are to be tackled, objections are to be tackled, and that is wonderfully done in the Kaivalya Pada. And then when the spiritual gravity goes on increasing for a yogi, he proceeds for transformation, which is the last leg of Kaivalya. So how does that happen? So we are given idea of the whole process of Kaivalya, which is not going to be has not been our experience. We may not even get experience, but we are told about as to what is that. So somebody, like books or travels, we don't travel to each and every nook and corner of the world, but somebody having traveled writes about the journeys and travels, and we read with interest, and we read with some kind of knowledge and enlightenment as to what this globe is. We may not go there in our lifetime, but we will have some information. So this journey of Kaivalya is beautifully described in the final lap of the Kaivalya Pada, which is interesting and which was of course recapitulated. And finally the Kaivalya, which is another definition which comes in this chapter. We already have seen 3 definitions of Kaivalya. Here comes the final definition in the 34th Sutra, Purushartha Shuddhyanam. So all purpose of Purusha comes to an end. Gunanam Pratiprasavaha. The gunas go in a reversal journey. They get enfolded. And then Swarupa Pratishtha. Therefore, Purusha gets established in essential form, essential nature, established in it. And that's how the Kaivalya is, and this Kaivalya is for all times. The Kaivalya is irrevocable, and that's the marvel of Kaivalya. So, this is a very fascinating chapter, and incidentally, so many aspects with regard to Chitta Paranamas and Chitta Avasthas are mentioned with reference to Kaivalya. In Kaivalya, how the Chitta transforms. That's a very interesting topic that has come here, and we understand the Chitta because of this picture that we get from the text, that the Chitta can head towards liberation. In such case, how is the Chitta? How is the Chitta processed? How is the Chitta undergoing transformations, transitions, etc., etc.? So we are given a preview of the culminative phase of spiritual samambonam. Therefore, it's a very, very interesting chapter, very important chapter. It casts lights on so many things. Otherwise, we won't get even inquiry about it. And then whenever an inquiry comes, we don't have solutions, we don't have answers. So Patanjali provides that. So with that, ultimately we have come to the end of the text, which you just now heard. Right, so it was a long journey for us, consuming more than 5 years, with so many obstacles, so many obstructions, that we were sitting at the institute, and ultimately it went on to the kind of YouTube mode. So many changes took place. But anyhow, we were blessed that we could accomplish and complete this very formidable text, huge text, purport-wise. So, well, we should be grateful for the time and the grace that has come to us. Okay, namaskar.
Let's recite the slokas on Guruji and end for today. Vaijñānikam pravaktritva आसनेषु कलाविदम् योगाभ्यासे च तत्त्वज्ञम् वन्देऽहं सुन्दरं गुरुम् योगवृक्षो हि लोकेऽस्मिन् यत्प्रेरणेन वर्धितः योगाचार्य गुरो तुभ्यं सुन्दराय नमो नमः. Thank you.
Namaskar all of you. Thank you.